prije svega da se zahvalim našim prijateljima iz naše Matice crnogorske. Ovo je jedan lijepi način da prošire dijapazon tema kojima se Matica bavi u kontinuitetu svih ovih godina, na način koji nam svima predstavlja i ponos i čast. To je institucija koja je i danas u najtežim vremenima, ili u vremenu koje su opterećena teškim i fokusiranim napadom na crnogorski identitet, na insignije crnogorske, na tradiciju, kulturu, na uopšte postojanje Crne Gore kao zajednice svih koji u njoj žive. Matica nosi vuču i slobode i znanja i spremnosti da se o temama i onim manje neprijatnim otvoreno razgovara i sa ljudima koji su kompetentni za te stvari. Večeras imamo priliku, ja samo želim, evo, pošto smo čuli u najkraćem o profesoru Šukli, on dragom prijatelju Žordiju, samo da izrazim zadovoljstvo što je on večeras ponovo sa nama. Njegov interes za Crnu Goru već, koliko ja mogu da pratim, postoji u kontinuitetu već 10 godina. On je kao takav i on je bio u Savjetu Evrope i u mnogim posmatračkim misijama i umio je i u najtežim, delikantnim momentima naše novije istorije da, kako bih kazao, formuliše vrlo kompetentno, vrlo objektivno, uravnoteženo, stručno i naučno mišljenje o onim procesima koje ponekad mi u Crnoj Gori doživljavamo prilično dramatično i na način u kojem se prepoznaje naše afiniteti, naše pristrasnosti i slične stvari. Profesor Šukla je u tom smislu naš pouzdani prijatelj koji se ne libi da izrazi riječ kritike kada je to neophodno i da nas podrži kada osjeti potrebu za takvom vrstom komunikacije prema nama. Za kraj želim da zahvalim što smo imali mogućnost da zajednički spremimo njegov dolazak u Crnu Goru, u Podgoricu i povodom nedavno objavljene knjige, ali i činjenica da je danas Crna Gora pred veoma važnim izazovima i perspektivama koje se tiču, naravno, naše, nadamo se svi, sigurno članstvo u Evropskoj uniji, za koje će još biti potrebno i vremena i truda i znanje i umijeće da se neke prepreke koje još uvijek postoje zaobiđu ili da se riješe na način koji će biti koristan za Crnu Goru kao društvo u cilini. Dakle, dragi Žordi, uvaženi profesor Šukla, Žordi, esteemed Professor Šukla, you have a floor. Thank you very much for being with us, and we are looking forward to hear your brief notes about your understanding of Montenegrin situation in the context of European agenda, and of course afterwards we shall be ready together with you maybe to entertain a few questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my dearest friend. I didn't follow the words of my friend Miodrag, but I suppose that this is a positive word. I say Miodrag, and I know that everybody mentioned my friend has Ambassador Blajovic, has Micho, but I am Catalan, my mother language is Catalan, and in Catalan Micho is a sock, and I have some reserve to say sock, to have Micho to my dear friend Ambassador Blajovic. We know each, first of all, thank you, Ambassador, for coming. Thank you, my diplomat, my Spanish diplomat, for coming. Thank you for hosting me, and thank you for attending this talk, this session this afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. Sorry for this informality, but just I arrived from Tirana, and I move tomorrow to Budva, because I am here because the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean invited me to draft the report of 20 years of the Parliamentary Assembly. In my new capacity as Professor of International Relations, and I celebrate in Budva this plenary session, and I will present my assignments and my conclusions. And on my way to Budva, when I visit Montenegro, always I come back to my friends to present my respects and to check and to see what is going on in Montenegro, because I have a special interest in Montenegro, and among all my friends in Montenegro, my first contact is Ambassador Blajovic. We know each other for quite a long period of times in the circles of the liberal family in Europe. And I have a special interest in Montenegro because Montenegro is the last example of the well-done independence in Europe. It is the last one. I am Spanish, I am Catalan, and I want to underline is the last and unique one did according with international law. And I had interest, intellectual interest for a long period of time to understand the mechanics of negotiation, of radical patience, of powers, of balance. When Yugoslavia disappeared, when Soviet Union disappeared, when this happened, it's a matter of consideration the evolution of these cultural and national and linguistic units. And I am Catalanist, I speak in Catalan at home with my family, but I am not independentist. And if you have interest, I can develop you this, and even my friend can pass the message to. But even was not an easy time, this time of independence that you will celebrate on May 20, the 20th anniversary. And the rest is quite unsuccessful in Europe in this moment, no? Talking about different types that we can consider. Moving from Montenegro to this artificial concept, Anglo-Saxon concept of Western Balkans, but I know that I have noticed that you don't like especially to put in the same bag from Ljubljana to Tirana, but this is the so-called concept and this works quite well in international relations. The concept is not my concept. This came from our common friend Vesna Pusic. Vesna Pusic, who is one of the authors of this book, that I will comment a little bit about this book, but I am not here to sell the book, just in case. Vesna Pusic say that we are not facing an enlargement, because the concept of Western Balkans, this territory is surrounded by member states of the European Union, from Croatia to Greece, to Romania, to Bulgaria, and so on. So this is not an enlargement, this is a consolidation of our European project. And in Brussels for time being, was this kind of bureaucratic sentence, the fatigue of the enlargements. Oh, we have too much countries, now it's very difficult to face a new enlargement, and this needs time, and we should postpone, and this is not a priority. And from one day to the other, because no one brought a clear perspective about the evolution of Trump administration and what is going on in the US, from one day to the other, nowadays, Europe needs urgently, so it's not a matter of patience, it's a matter of new geopolitical dynamics. Europe needs to consolidate the project in two directions, to increase the integration, European integration, the political integration, to deeply integrate European Union project, and to enlarge the project. The formula is that it's not a political will, it's not that we want Montenegro in or out, it's some standards, and these standards have a name, Copenhagen criteria, and your country and Albania and the other candidates must to fulfill the Copenhagen criteria. This is the first step, but nevertheless, European Union needs you inside the Europe, because in this time, it's not anymore, sorry, because I can, with my students, I say to my students, what do you want? A diktat conference or jam session conference? And today I am much more in the mood of jam session because I just arrived, as I already mentioned. And now I jump to another concept, but just when Josep Borrell finished the mandate as High Representative of the European Union, in one gathering, in one homage in Madrid, few weeks before, after the end of the mandate, we asked several friends from European movement. Now I am chairing European movement in the Catalan section. I am the deputy president in the Spanish section. We asked to Josep Borrell, what what's your analysis? And Josep Borrell said this more than 1 year before. The first prima facie analysis that the concept of Western doesn't exist anymore. Occidente, Western, doesn't exist anymore. This looks quite exaggerated 1 year and some months ago. This idea that works since the end of the Second Cold War, this alliance, this strong alliance, military and political alliance of common values, doesn't exist, doesn't work anymore. And frankly speaking, this is the factual situation today. US already announced withdrawal 5,000 or even more militaries from Germany. US sends a message to Spain that we should consider and express our concerns about some of this message about our territorial integrity even. And for first time since the end of the Second Cold War, Europe must stand and lead a solution and answer a political message to the world that we are for our own model and we are here to let our own model of democratic values, of democratic standards in front of Moscow and Washington. And you can say, I am here and I saw some flags in my way from Tirana to here, no? Yes, US play a relevant role in this part of the Balkans, yes, but this is absolutely different. This administration is different. And some people, some analysts said, well, the US constitutional system can resist 40 years of this administration. The check and balance system is quite resilient in order to resist these 40 years of the second Trump's mandate. But this is much more complex and Europe must take decisions. One decision is to consolidate the European project, to increase the European integration in several dimensions. One very important dimension is the defense, security and defense. We cannot subcontract anymore our defense to the the Americans. We cannot anymore to say, well, we pay a little bit and Americans pay more than the half of the NATO budget. This is over. This is a message from US and we must take our responsibility in matter of security and defense, integration in energy, integration in the roadmap for this integration is the Draghi and Letta reports, especially Draghi. If you enter in details, because it's usual to talk about Draghi and Letta report, but few people really read the Letta and Draghi report. And my opinion is that Draghi's report, now we have Letta living in Madrid, we are friends, but frankly speaking, I am sorry because this is a record, but Draghi report is much more complete. It's much more the roadmap for the European integration in several dimensions. In investigation as well. We must take our strategical decisions in terms of investigation and research in Europe. China is overcame US in terms of research. Very soon, very soon. I moved from Tirana to Montenegro with a fantastic electric Chinese car. So on. So we need to take our own decisions to consolidate the European project. I don't want to say that in some near future we can recover the relation and the talks with Americans. I wish this, but Trump wins not for a teeny majority, wins for a strong majority, and something is behind this, and some political, cultural background is behind this, and we need to take into account all of this. And maybe in the future, someday, we can talk with some president in Russia, but not today, not tomorrow, not next tomorrow. So we must to consolidate the European project and to present this project of freedom and democracy in front of the world, have one model and our own model. I come back to the so-called Western Balkans. Obviously, each country have their own sovereignty to take decisions, to be part of European Union or not to be part of the European Union. Looks that Montenegro is in this moment on the vanguard of this way to European Union. And I like this. I know in this moment almost zero about the internal dynamics of Montenegro, about consensus or not consensus about this integration. I will mention the Spanish example, but I wish Montenegro has a member of European Union and say, what is European Union? European Union is Costa Brava, my former constituency in my times of deputies, is Budva. What is the limits of Europe? This is very interesting. What is the limits? The political, cultural limits of Europe. It's for sure not Budva. It's for sure not Montenegro. Montenegro is part of the European project. Is Moscow and Russia part of the European project? This is a very interesting talk, but for the question and answer, not for now. For now, it's obviously that no, it's not part. I had been 11 years member of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And we tried it, and I was president of the Liberal Group from 2014 to 2018. It means a very critical momentum with Crimea invasion, annexation, and the eastern part of Ukraine. And I did a lot of efforts in the Presidential Committee to trying to keep Russia in. But one moment in the history of the people and the countries and the political projects, it's time to say enough. And it's obviously that now Russia is not part of this project. Russia is part of an opposite project. And talking about Ukraine, and talking about Western Balkans, and talking about the borders of European Union. In a different frame, in a different context, to consider the neutrality was a right position in the past. For instance, Austria, after Second World War, decided to be a neutral country for several historical, geopolitical, and ideological reasons and dynamics inside the Social Democrat Party, especially in Austria. Well, and then Austria took the decision to be candidate to European Union, to be candidate to NATO. Much more risky debate after the Second World War was what happened in Germany in 1951, 1952. Something of this is explained in this book, collective book. I don't know if you read it, something about the Stalin's note in 1951, 1952. And this, I think that led me to enter in details about the Stalin notes, because Stalin's notes show, is a lesson, is a master class about the leadership in politics and what must do. By surprise, Stalin brought a letter to the Western German leaders, invite the Western German politicians to face immediately the reunification of Germany with one condition: to set up Germany as a neutral country, no member of the Western European Union project, never, no member of the Euro-Atlantic Alliance, that now it's damaged, but at this time was very powerful. So Stalin's invitation was immediately reunification of Germany, but keep Germany neutral in the center. The biggest country of Europe has a neutral country in times of the Cold War. At this time, it's very interesting to follow this and to read about this. The Chancellor Konrad Adenauer was clear from the zero, the first moment, no to this option, no to this proposal to the reunification with the condition to be neutral. And Adenauer reacted to say, no, I prefer to wait, to resist, to be radical patient, because someday we will see the reunification of Germany. This was the position of the Christian Democrats and the Konrad Adenauer leadership in 1951-1952. In front, has a clear reaction in front of the Stalin letter, so-called the Stalin note. It's not an ideological prejudice about this and that. I was and I am part of the liberal family, so I am not supporting the Christian Democrats in front. I just want to describe that in front of the Konrad Adenauer reaction, the Social Democrats in Germany had a lot of doubts. In fact, the Social Democrats in Germany tried to support this idea of fast-track reunification and pay the price of the neutrality of the biggest country in Europe in the time of Cold War. You can suppose the next step of this in times of Cold War. If in Italy Communist Party was 35%, can you imagine the democratic play the day after of this neutrality in Germany was from Stalin was not innocent to play there some democratic role and to try to move Germany to the Eastern Bloc, to the Soviet bloc, to the communist bloc. So Konrad Adenauer say no, Social Democrat Party say why not, and in the German parliament, the Social Democrat group didn't vote in favor of the Treaty of the Steel and Carbon Community. Social Democrats only change and shift the position in 1959. If you want to check, different leaderships in the Social Democrats in Germany keep this deal, this horizon of neutrality in front of the Adenauer option for the Western values. And only in 1959 they removed the ideas and they did the aggiornamento in favor of the Western project. And I think that this is a masterclass to take the right way in the right moment, even when this is a long-term consequences and decisions about the reunification. I say this because I have a special interest in the study the sorry for my poor English, especially today that I arrive at direct, the crossroads of the countries in the critical momentums. And now I want to express my 200% solidarity with Ukraine in this war of invasion. So I am supporting Ukraine 200% today and since February 2022. I had been together with a former deputy from Germany, Christian Democrat deputy from Germany, for 3 years, co-rapporteurs about Ukraine in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. So I have some experience in Ukraine. And because I have some experience, I can say now, fully support Ukraine, but in historical perspective, Ukraine did a big mistake. They didn't define clearly after independence the horizon. They didn't say, but this is not international relations agreements or conversation, this is own conversations among Ukrainian people to define, to agree, which is the future of Ukraine. And the situation was desperate in 2014 when the European Union should not suggest put in the table the strategic agreement between Ukraine and the European Union in the Vilnius summit in November 2013. Ukraine agreed to sign this agreement. It means to be partnership with the European Union. And in the last minute, Ukraine decided to suspend. Because what was behind is to try to play in the both houses, to try to play the role and the joke and to try to play with Moscow and Brussels at the same time. And I said that neutrality was a good option for Austria after the Second World War. Neutrality was an option, a very decent option for Ukraine after independence. Because if you say from the minute zero, I want to play this role as an independent, go ahead. But what Ukraine, and I want to repeat, I talk in historical perspective. I express my solidarity to Ukraine today 200%. But if some country try to play this pattern, to say, yes, I will say something in Brussels and something different in my domestic politics and dynamics, the result of this double role is dramatic. And this was the disaster for Ukraine in 2014. And this is the beginning of the disaster in Ukraine in terms of revolutions, pressions, elections, tensions. And I want to say something very short. Serbia must take note about the wrong behavior of Ukraine in 2014 and 15 and 16. In the current times, in the current framework, to play in the two, jugar en dos pistas, how to help me, to
have a double game.
To have a double game is not possible. I fully respect if someone want to be part of this community and the other community, but nowadays, and it's optional. It's not the Trump policy to say, this is mine, please, 200% loyalty. No, it's optional. But come back to the Ukrainian pattern in 2014 and 15. These have negative consequences. And I want to say that in the so-called Western Balkans, the way to European Union looks clear for Montenegro, looks clear for Albania. North Macedonia have a lot of peculiarities and complexities. Bosnia have a lot of complexities. But then we have this double game for Serbia. And my last contribution, and then I am very open to discuss and to talk if you want, and otherwise this sunny day is fantastic for some raki. Spain nowadays have some tensions, political internal tensions. I am not anymore in politics after 2 decades in the parliament. But Spain can present this year, because this year we celebrate 40 years of our accession to European Union together with Portugal. 1st January 1986. And after politics, in my second life, I started my second life with the PhD. And the thesis of my PhD, the topic of my PhD, is consents and dissents in international relations, in foreign policy relations in Spain. I don't want to present all of my thesis here, but I want to say that Spain have the pattern of all the democracies, new democracies, with goodwill to be member of European Union. It means Spain plays the role of the passive consensus since 1977, it means after Franco, until 2003. And we break this consensus in foreign policy in 2003 with the controversial support to the invasion of Iraq by this coalition of American, British, and the ruling party of Spain at this time support the invasion of Iraq, and this is the end of the consensus in foreign policy in Spain. To be more precisely, the referendum and the membership in NATO was a matter of dissent in the Spanish foreign policy, but was mainly a matter of dissent inside the leftist parties, a logic of dissent. But we Spanish, we had a clear position in favor of the European integration. And this concept that is in the books and in the academic article of passive consent, it means that who is in the opposition supports the policy of the ruling party in foreign policy in the matters of main and primordial interest for the country, with the condition that the ruling party, when this party will become member of the opposition, will become opposition party, will support the core business of this consensual position. And this is the history of Spain for the membership in the Council of Europe. Spain is the unique case of a country who became member of the Council of Europe before the approve of the constitutional, the democratical constitution. It was a signal of support of the European community to the transition to the democracy. But this was possible in 1977 only because the common position and the consensus in favor of Europe was very clear in the political parties, almost in all the spectrum, almost. And this works for the Council of Europe, and this works in 1986 for the European Union. And I am today in Podgorici, and I want to say that for my Montenegrin friends, is a good advice to think in strategical terms, to think in a long term about European Union membership, if in a rhetoric terms everybody is in favor. It's a very bad business to take advantage of this portfolio for internal disagreements. It's very bad business for your country to use this as a tool for internal disputes. I can't to say this because my political party, who was ruling party in Catalonia, was crucial in arithmetical terms in Spain, but never been part of the government of Spain. For this independent perspective, I can say that this is the good way. And I can say this not only in historical perspective, talking about 1986, but everybody in this room were much more young than now. I can say this because just nowadays, a very small country, but friendly country for me, namely Andorra. You know Andorra, this is a small country, but you love small countries, and I love small countries, but Andorra is smaller than Montenegro for sure. Andorra, the official language of Andorra is Catalan. I have a lot of friends in Andorra, no bank friends. But Andorra is doing a lot of mistakes because Andorra is in the final mile of negotiations for a strategical partnership with European Union. Andorra is not candidate to be full member of European Union, but Andorra is in this last minute. And I have friends in different political parties, and Europe and this partnership and this agreement is a matter of internal dispute. And this is a disaster. This is a disaster for the future of Andorra. And I can compare the Spanish model in 1986 and what happened today in Andorra. Maybe it's because today we have this machine. It's much more difficult to do politics with these machines and with Twitter and with Instagram and with superficiality, frankly. I did politics in my life with Twitter and before Twitter. And you can consider before Jesus Christ and after Jesus Christ, sorry for this frivolity, but it's not the same to do politics before Twitter and after Twitter, before Instagram and after Instagram. I know the complexity of this. But it's a big mistake to put the strategical reasons of the country in a short-term mentality. I don't want to deliver this advice to the Montenegrins in no any kind of superiority or lesson. You have your logics, your complexities, and I like your logics and your complexities. I finish with this because you did 20 years ago a very good and consensual way to your independence. I know for some of my Montenegrin friends that even this time was not an easy time for you, because in times of polarization, nothing is easier for the winners and the losers, for the people in favor of independence and for the people in favor to keep Montenegro and Serbia in this federal or confederal model and agreement. It's not easy, but was fair in legal terms, the agreement and the compromise, international compromise, and procedural and systematic. And this happened 20 years ago. And some of my Montenegrin friends remember some Catalan colleagues present in these times 20 years ago. Some of these people worked with me 20 years later, much more older. And I want to say that some Catalans did a stupid, naive, so on, so on. This is for the questions and answers, not for now. And I want to say that the Spanish people, we have a special love and friendship for Montenegro, and this is especially present with the reason that our diplomat in Montenegro, surname is Montenegro, and my constituency is Girona, and Girona is the land of Salvador Dalí, and we like surrealism, and this is our contribution to surrealism, to have our Spanish diplomat, my friend Montenegro, in Montenegro, ready for increase our relationship, our diplomatic relationship, and to see you very soon in our common project, that is this new project, namely European Union, different from the Second World War, different for 10 years ago, different from the Western concept, different for the transatlantic agreement, our own project in this world in reconfiguration. Sorry for my tired English, and thank you very much for your time, and I am at your disposal.
Ako neko želi da postavi pitanje našem gostu, izvolite.
Ako mi dozvole prisutni da ja kažem, da ja pitam, da ne opterećujem.
Može.
Thank you, Professor. Just very briefly, apologizing myself in front of other friends here, taking the floor again. We would like to know very briefly what is your assessment of the situation in post-Orban Hungary, and what are the repercussions, what are the reflections on the one side European Union as such, also in the context of decision-making process there, potential changes, and on the other hand, what is your reading about the impact on Western Balkan countries, not only Serbia, but general European agenda in Western Balkan countries in post-Orban and post-Siarto period?
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your question. I want to answer this, but I don't want to go immediately to Orban and the new Prime Minister. The answer to this is something that for some people is a dreamer project, the Federalist project, European Federalist project. The answer is that we need to reform the treaties. We need to reform the European Union treaties and to reduce to zero the unanimity, sorry for my tired English. We, Europe, we cannot be each election waiting for the result of Hungary, of Bulgaria, obviously France, April next year. Because in foreign policy, in enlargement, what we need is to reform the treaties and to overcome the unanimity, sorry for my tired English, even for the accession of Montenegro, because Montenegro is on the way, but we'll see what happens with the decision of the member states. I am very happy for the results in Hungary, and I think that this is a signal that the populism have some limits, not only in Hungary. And this is an example of, briefly, this leftist thinker from South America, Lakoff, who say, it's very important to put the populist from one extreme and the other extreme in office in order to show the limits of the application of the populism in reality. So I don't want the populists in my country, in my government. I don't want the populists in France. And I want to agree coalition with these people. Nevertheless, please enter to the room, take office, take the control, and show the limits of your rhetorics and your promise. Now Hungary returns through the EPP party to this family. We'll see Bulgaria, but the systematic answer to this is that European Union project needs to overcome, to reform the treaties and to overcome the unanimity. This is unanimity. Two questions, thank you.
Thank you for your lecture. Congratulations. I wanted to ask, you said you seem proud of your Catalan language and culture. You said you speak a few times in introduction that you speak Catalan and that it's your mother language. On the other hand, briefly after that you said, if I remember well, that you are not independentist.
Yes.
So what are essentially your reasons for being so proud and connected to your origin, and at the same time not being, let's say, for independent Catalonia? For example, we have in football, which is very important for diplomacy and national identity, essentially. We know how much this polarization is accentuated towards Spain. But at the same time, Catalonia is not independent. So your opinion and your attitude, why are you not for independent Catalonia?
Thank you for the question, straight to the point. And when I said all of this, first of all, the identity, I don't know each other yet, we can take a coffee later on, about your background, my background. The identity is the identity. Some cosmopolitan people have a complex identities. I think that at this stage of my life, I have a complex identity after traveling, and I have the status of miles in Iberia. But the main part of the people, and as a politician, I must to take into account, we cannot do these rhetorics that everybody has an ambassador. 3 years here, 3 years here, we are cosmopolitans. No. The main part of our voters, our population, are local people with one identity. Talking about this identity, I am Catalan. I think in Catalan mainly, I talk in Catalan. The answer for Europe is to create a different state for each identity. If this happens, at my students, I teach always when it's according with the reference, and even when it's not according with the reference, I always start to spend 1 or 2 lessons to the maps. Empire called First World War, Second World War, limits, so on and so on. The borders of Europe, I am not talking about Western Balkans. Let's move to the Central Europe. This is Slovakia. But you know that Slovakia have a relevant minority of Hungarians. This is Romania. But you know very well that in the northwest of Romania, namely Transylvania, it's a very relevant community of Hungarian people. This is Ukraine, that I know a little bit more even. And you know that in Ukraine we have Hungarian minority, we have Polish more than minority, we have Russian. So the rule is that if we must to create, I am quite a specialist in identities, I like this topic, an identity for each national identity. I consider my identity has characteristics of national identity for language, culture, historical background. This is extremely complex, and especially here, because on my way from Tirana to Podgorici, in the border I saw the flags of Albania, Montenegro. I am in favor of this. your referendum, because I think that your referendum was a clear example of well-done process. And in democracy, the process and the formality is a precondition. Talking about, briefly, for my health, I write books about the past and international relations in order to avoid my memories, no? Because it's not time for. First, in front of the Montenegrin case, the attempt of 2017, 16, 18 was not according with the law, was not agreed between the parts, was not according with the constitution, but even worse, I was inside of these political logics because I was a member of the Spanish parliament and my political party was split between moderates and people. And you cannot imagine, you cannot believe me, but talking about surrealism, and Salvador Dalí was surrealistic. For a Spanish civil servant, for a Spanish diplomat, for a Spanish lawyer, for a Spanish catedrático, full professor of this and that, can be impossible. From my background and my family, I was not prepared to be president of the liberal group in the Council of Europe or diplomat. But the reality is that after 15 years in the Foreign Affairs Committee, after 11 years in Council of Europe, and after 4 years in the Secret Service Committee in the Spanish Parliament, I understand a little bit what is going on in their life. And it was surrealistic for me to return to Barcelona and to meet with my friends in a naive is a diplomatic word to say, the revolution of the smiles. Literally, this was one of the headlines, no? The revolution of the smiles, the Gandhian resistance. What is this? I want to be prudent because this is a record. And I want to say, in front of this, the price to pay is this and that. I don't want to enter in details. I am just in favor of the maturity of the people in general. If we are fighting for the worker class in front of the capitalism, let's go until the end. But I am not in favor, I am against the superficiality and the naive behavior. And believe me or not believe me, it was Catalonia 6-7 years ago. Unbelievable. Because the consequences of this is a big polarization, is a strong frustration. One national sport in Spain, and I'm sure that is in Montenegro as well, is to blame politicians. But at the end of the day, people believe a lot in politics, and in politicians even. It's a national sport to blame politicians. But if one politician say, this is possible, go ahead, follow me until the end, people do this several times. And this was the case for several people in Catalonia 7-8 years ago. And the result is a big frustration and a lack of cohesion. More than 70% of the Catalan people, talking about more Balkanic mentality, you can understand me, more than 70% of Catalan people have a relative, a grandmom, a father or mother, or grandmom, or grandmom, or grandfather, born outside of Catalonia. So the Catalan identity is quite complex. I am part of this 20%, that my mom, my father, my grandmom, is born in Catalan, so I am part of this pool. I am a politician, I know how works the world, more or less. With this fragility, to push the country to this was incredible. Because politics in general, talking about Trump, talking about Putin, is not a match, it's not a football club Barcelona match. Obama brought a very nice article at the beginning of his presidency. He brought an article in Washington Post and he said, now in times of these machines, the political analysis will move much more to the rhetorics of a sports analysis. You enter, you break the face, you break the legs, you are 200%. Political leadership is to say, this is a little bit more complex. Some people say, I love politics, I like politics, I understand politics, and consider politics as a Barca-Real Madrid match. And to be member of European Union is not to be black and white, is to fulfill the chapters, is to fulfill the Copenhagen conditions and blah, blah, blah. Sorry for my long answer, but this is a little bit therapeutic, even to say that. If Yugoslavia disappear, Slovenian friends, go ahead. No way, no alternative, sorry, this is non-constitutional. If Soviet Union disappear, some leaders of the former Soviet republics had much more dreams to fly from Astana to Moscow and to become the new leader of Soviet Union than became the new president of an independent state. But if Soviet Union disappear, take into account all the elements. But to consider in rational terms this in Spain, in UK, they agree in a very sophisticated manner a referendum for Scotland.
Još neko?
Sorry for my answer. You touched something.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming tonight and sharing your knowledge with us. I come from a political party, a relatively new one, Party of European Progress, and I would go back to the story of EU because that's the most interesting story that we are living in the moment in Montenegro. You mentioned that, and I agree with you, that politics in general, not just the EU, being and becoming a EU member should not be a short-term project. It should be really responsibly done, and the integration process should be really a long-term thinking process. But you mentioned also we live last few years Twitter and social media politics, which has a strong influence in Montenegro too. As I don't know how much you follow, but in Montenegro really these social media and our politicians are really using social medias, or misusing, better said, to present the results just in the political side of getting some political profit for the political party in terms of elections and that way. So I was wondering, how do you see, having in mind your experience in the EU institutions too, does the EU see this, and how will that reflect becoming a member? Will it cost us in terms of time when we will be the member of EU, or as we have the opportunity to see the new mechanisms in the accession treaty that are being mentioned last days about the controlling when we become the EU member, what are the consequences if we don't really apply all the rules of EU? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. That is a sophisticated question. I am in favor of political parties and politicians, so if your political party is pro-Europe, all the best for the pluralism and democracy. I don't know in details, and I don't want to enter in internal dynamics. I am lawyer and PhD in communication. I am not sociologist, but I will try to be some considerations about psychology and sociology. I think that after COVID, the humanity, some parts of the humanity are facing another enfermedad, sickness very seriously, namely screens. I am not talking in a coffee. I can present some scientific arguments in front of this. I never smoke in my life. I accept to smoke cigars with 3 friends, if different friends. If these friends buy the cigar and offer to me the cigar. A strange criteria, but I never smoke. And I see some smokers, this attitude, no? The last, el último pitido, no? El último. Well, I don't smoke, but when I am at midnight, ready to go to the bed, but I say, let me to check 2 minutes. And 2 minutes became half an hour. This is very similar to this. El último. And this is extremely risky, and this will have a strong impact. I am teaching in the university 1 morning per week, and this plus artificial intelligence. Everybody is in favor of artificial intelligence. Me too. It's very good to accelerate investigation. I am not here to solve this challenge, but it's for sure that this have an impact in our societies, and we'll see what happens. This phenomenon in politics. As I said, I did politics before and after a screen. And in the first years of, not Instagram, I did politics and electoral campaigns, 6 consecutive elections. If you are in politics, I invite you to enjoy the politics in terms of elections, no? 6 consecutive mandates in parliament. And at the beginning of Twitter, I was even very touché when I saw someone criticize me with the photo of this Mr. very local name, attack me. I need to realize years to understood that this man doesn't exist, that this photo doesn't exist, that this profile is a fake profile, and then maybe behind this profile is my opponent, my enemy, or even my colleague of party. Attack. And this have emotional impact in the human beings, and politicians are human beings. And now politics move to a very emotional, and some people say once again that, yeah, you are very good. I remember in my times in politics, I tried to prepare very well my interventions, better than today, frankly speaking, in the parliament. But everything changed around 2015-16. I was, at this moment, 15 years old-fashioned in parliament. When I arrived in the Spanish parliament, the so-called new politics, and these have 2 names and surnames, one very centrist, so-called centrist political party, that was much more than centrist, the champion of Instagram, and very leftist party, another one very leftist party. And these people was less and less prepared in terms of political deliberation. No, please, the photo for Instagram. Okay, the photo. Let's to enter in details of amendments for the law. No, the photo in Instagram. This political party was the first political party who contract a full-time photographer in the plenary session to take photos. And then the deputy speaker of this political party, the main concern of one afternoon in the plenary was to have good photos and to fix in Instagram fighting for democracy. What is this? Let's to enter in details. So this looks as a talk in the cafe, but this is very seriously, because a lot of people, me too at midnight, check the social medias. But this is not real politics. Or the other political party who saw now the most important part of the law process in Spain is the ponencia legislativa, no? And this is a moment that we discuss between parliamentarians without media and without journalists. So it's the crucial moment to agree and to argue with equal foot. If you have, Ambassador, good arguments, you must convince me, and if in terms of intellectual capacity. This political party push and push to do this part of the process with streaming, because the people must know what is behind this amendment as the lobbies. If you want to start with Instagram and streaming in the legislative process, this kills the democracy. And apparently this happened in our societies, and apparently this happened in your society as well. What is needed? No, I know, and even I passed to the translator my friend's Ambassador Blachowicz tweets, because I inform my society with all of this, okay? But the good leadership, Konrad Adenauer didn't know Twitter. But Konrad Adenauer didn't accept that Germany has a neutral country. I don't know, he was very clever, extremely clever, or super clever. But he has a sense of the historical moment. No, neutral in the center of Europe, near to Mr. Stalin. Not this. But with my full respect and passion for Montenegro. Now, you are in a historical momentum. It's now. And you will enjoy this, because it's much more in this historical and worldwide context. It's time for you. So express much more respect for the people who can consider life without Instagram, but life with Instagram. Sorry for my... About the accession, this is my final. Legally, you cannot renounce to the conditions of full member, to the veto and others, legally. But if you want to express some political will, I suppose that this is very welcome, to renounce some of this old-fashioned unanimity. Could be very positive. Sorry.
Super, thank you.
Ajde, izvoli.
Thank you, Professor Šukle, and thank you very much for sharing your excellent thoughts with us, and I think you touched upon many things. First of all, I will ask you 2 questions. When Prime Minister of Spain in the last few months speaks, is he addressing EU, Spain, or 650 million Spanish-speaking people, including close to 40% of USA citizens? That's the first question. Second, Catalan is a fully formed, fluent language with its own literature, novels and everything else. Is it closer to Spanish or to French? Who can understand you better? Do Spaniards understand you better, or French, or French people? And the third question is, it's good that working group is formed within the EU to draft accession protocol for Montenegro. Do you believe that some countries or groups will be using it to additionally amend Lisbon Treaty, or will it only be concerned about the accession of Montenegro? And could I deliver a little? I would like to mention some things. I saw when you were speaking about Western Balkans, I could see that you know that this term was imposed to this region. It was supposed to be called Adriatic Europe, and I always, in my speeches, say Adriatic Europe, because how could Western Balkan exist if there is no Eastern Balkans? Nobody calls Romania, Bulgaria, and northern Turkey. It could be Black Sea Europe, but even we can go further. We are also called Southeastern Europe, which is not true. We are South Central Europe.
Yeah.
Geographically, if you put a map, it is South Central Europe. And you are quite okay. It's not enlargement, it's filling up the gap. For Croatia, Montenegro, and Albania are, well, their inclusion into the EU is, whole Western Balkan is important for us. But there is an additional dimension when we mention Montenegro and Albania. This is Adriatic dimension. which is quite important because Adriatic-Ionian Basin, since the division of the Roman Empire, were the seas of confrontation when Montenegro entered NATO. Practically, the whole basin was in one organization: Greece, Albania, Montenegro, Croatia, Slovenia, and Italy. That means there was a chance to develop cooperative model of security, which is much cheaper and much more lasting, where you can build confidence and so on. And I know a lot about Ukraine. I will not talk about it, but when you mention Hungary, a lot of people believe that Hungarians feel like they are an island among Slavic people, and on the other side, Romanian. They didn't realize they may have more Slavic genes than what Magyars brought with them. For example, for us, for Croats, and I think for Montenegrin, we are very conscious that we mixed with Illyrians, that they were here. And we are not for us, this is a normal fact. We are happy about it. This is not something that we deny or that is something bad. Therefore, but I'm interested in this about Austrian independence. They were forced to do the neutrality. They were forced by Russians said, if you don't accept it, we will not pull out. Therefore, it was a choice, but in reality it was a forced choice. And if I may say, for example, when you think about 7 countries that emerged out of former Yugoslavia, in 80s, Croats were for Yugoslavia, but we were against Serboslavia. Because in reality, out of 300 generals and admirals, only 26 were Croats. And only 7 of them were conscious of their Croatness. And we were producing Croats of Croatia, Vojvodina and Bosnia and Herzegovina produced about 1/3 of GDP of Yugoslavia. In much more of hard currency. Therefore, we were all the time from the beginning of 19th century, but for us it was easier. Croats are federalist people because living with Hungarians, Austrians, Venetians, we were fighting for justice. And even in 1918, we were a federalist nation. Therefore, for us to be a member of the EU, it's easy. And I think you also mentioned for Montenegro, when you were mentioning security of the EU, my view is Montenegro entering the EU will strengthen its statehood, and additionally to that, they will also increase their security. And while you are saying about future, that Russia should be in, I think you are thinking behind that we are living in Euro-Asian continent, where Russia swings every 50 years or 100 years, and it depends how Europe, if we have cushions to embrace them, or do we sort of put them down. Therefore, this is sometimes bad. Of course, I am for Ukraine, and this is terrible what is being done. And in my opinion, they created a big mess for themselves. Now they have at least 80 million Poles and Ukrainians that are their enemies. Just forgetting others. And I think they made a very strategic mistake. But when I'm thinking about Croatia and Slovenia, we are strategically anchored. Our societies exactly where we geographically are. Montenegro should be helped further to be anchored strategically where it is, and I'm not sure about the others.
Good to know. I want to answer briefly. May I? We are out of time. We are running up.
Telegraphically.
I can answer all, but let's continue the talk, but these people want to go at home. I can answer all, but when I was president of the Liberal group, I had the former Minister of Defense of Croatia in my group. In one talk, it was time of Catalonia and all. He said, you are a little bit exaggerate, because he was innocent the question was innocent. What's the last time that you had a Catalan president in Spain? And I said the factual answer, 1873, and this man was assassinated. Full stop. So, and the Croat former minister, was a little bit shocked because I am Catalan, I am not independentist, but I am federalist in terms of what happened is that sometimes I don't find a lot of federalists in the other part of Spain, but this is our context. The Latin power, because you mentioned the language and the capacity. I am very in favor of the Mercosur agreement. This is not Latin power, but I want to say that in times of protectionism, this alliance between European Union and Mercosur opened a very interesting door. Second, obviously Spain used and must use the soft power of the Latin and the Hispanic and Instituto Cervantes, all of this, and this works because in the ranking, our language is very high. Nevertheless, my conclusion is that an Hispano in US don't want to speak Spanish, want to speak English, as a matter of integration, mainly. So we need to use this soft power, but this works only partially. About Hungary, you know better than me, and about, you point out a very, very interesting question, if some countries can take advantage of this, the draft of the treaty, in order to move on in another reforms. This could be only by consensus, and what I want to say is that Madame von der Leyen said that reform the treaties was impossible, until 3 weeks ago that she said we must go to reform the treaties. Yes, I remember some bureaucrats, sorry for bureaucrats, no one in the room is bureaucrat, everyone have will to serve, but I remember some bureaucrats in Brussels, the fatigue of the enlargement, please. Look what happened, what is going on around the world. We are not anymore for fatigue, we must support and to take decisions, strategical decisions. 2, Western Balkans, consolidation, so-called, I agree 200% about your considerations about the artificial creation of this concept. And secondly, in these times that is full of concerns, we have good news in one peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan that is on the way these days, and the elections in Armenia first week of June is crucial in order to support. And what happened today in Yerevan is the meeting of the European political community, but is a strong European Union campaign in favor of the pro-peace treaty in the South Caucasus. And talking about the borders of Europe, among these 3 countries in the South Caucasus, one clearly don't want to be member of European Union. But it's very important to have stability, because this is the connectivity between Europe and Asia, the unique connectivity, because South Caucasus have 2 complex neighbors, Russia and Iran. So the foreign policy of the European Union must to support the stability, obviously, the neighborhood and the integration of this region, namely artificially Western Balkans, Montenegro, and let's see, I think Albania is ready, we could be ready, and stability in the South Caucasus. And I stop here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and sorry for this peculiar, not very well structured interview.